Hi, everyone. How you guys doing today? Did you guys have fun today? It didn't sound like it. Tell me how you had fun. How you doing today? Good. One more time, how you doing today? Woo! Sounds like you guys are doing awesome. So, a little bit about me. What I'm here today for is to tell you a little bit about my journey, kind of what I do at Google and how I got there. Here's a photo of me. This is me in Hawaii. This was earlier this year. I took a trip there with my wife. I enjoy doing little trips like this. It's kind of a personal thing about me that I like. This one I chose to show to you because it's particularly interesting. I'm actually really up high here on top of a mountain area. And this is actually an area in Hawaii that's known as the wettest place on Earth. So they get more rainfall and more fog and more water than any other place on Earth. And there's actually a swamp that's up in the mountains. It's not a swamp that you might normally see that's down in a valley or something like that. It's up in the mountains. And I took this photo to kind of show, this is an interesting place, right? It creates some kind of curiosity. How does water get up that high? Why is it so rainy? And I kind of want to tell you a little bit about my story and my curiosities and my interests throughout my career. So, a little bit about what I do. As Kate mentioned, I work at Google. And at Google, I work on a team called Accessibility Engineering. And now, you might have heard that term accessibility before. Does anyone know what accessibility means? Feel free to yell it out if you do. Go ahead.
I think accessibility means like you have access or something like that.
That's great. You have access. How about someone else? Access to what? Extra features? Maybe.
The ability to have access to something.
That's great. It's the ability to have access to something. That's a great way to state it. And my specific position, what I'm looking to do is to bring access to technology, to the physical world, to everything around us for people who have disabilities. So this includes people in wheelchairs, like myself. It includes people who are blind, they can't see, people who are deaf, they can't hear. And what my goal is to build technology and to build experiences that help these people connect with each other around us, the physical world, and be able to use devices like a cell phone, other things like that. I'm going to show you a quick video here in a second. It talks about two individuals. One person is a guy named Jeff, and the other person is a woman named Stephanie. They're both people with disabilities, and they use technology and able to help them access different things. And the video in here, it's going to show people using a piece of software that goes on a phone. And these individuals in the video, they can't use their hands. They have a disability that makes it difficult for them to use their hands. And we'll discuss different voice activation software. You learned a little bit about voice activation earlier this morning. In the video, they'll discuss voice activation software that makes it easy for them to use their devices. So if we can go ahead and roll this video.
Let's go, guys. My name's Stephanie, and I just finished my master's in advertising. I'm a C4, C5 split-level quadriplegic. I have no feeling from my collarbone down, so it is absolutely vital that I'm able to use my voice. Okay, Google, start voice access.
My name's Jeff, and I have a neurological condition called essential tremor. It is incredibly difficult to use my hands and fingers. It is very easy for me to use my voice. Okay, Google, start voice access.
After using this product for probably about 10 seconds, I think I'm falling in love with it. Open camera. You use your voice, and you're able to access the world. Shutter. Share. Hangouts. Astrid Weber. Send.
I cannot tell you how excited I am about this product. Open calendar. New when you don't have the ability to use your fingers and hands. Family movie night. It's really all about voice.
As you can see, software like that, to these folks, Stephanie and Jeff, it's very important. As Stephanie said, use your voice and you're able to access the world. Now that's very impactful. If you think about it from the perspective of these two people, since they can't use their fingers, They can't use a device. They can't connect with other people and access the world. So this kind of technology, this technology that we've all developed, voice recognition, it really enables them to do this. I'll talk a little bit more about my work later in the presentation, but I wanted to share a little bit more with you about me. So here's another little trip I did earlier, a couple years ago. Here I am with my wife, and we're feeding this large bird here. Who knows what kind of bird this is? Go ahead and yell it out if you know. Ostrich, that's right. Very large bird. This is actually a little bit south of here. There's an ostrich farm. We had a lot of fun there. The other thing I like to do in my free time is do some gardening. So here it shows our garden in our backyard. We have lots of vegetables there. We have things like, we have kale, we have lettuce, we have squash, we have arugula. So who here likes vegetables? Do you guys love vegetables? Wow, a lot of vegetable lovers. Actually, I personally don't like vegetables, but someone in our family does. This guy. So this is our rabbit. His name is Horton. He's very cute. He eats all of our vegetables. He's about 10 pounds. He's a big boy, but he has a little buddy with him. This is his buddy. This is Peanut. This is our dog. And of course, you can see they get to wear sweaters here. They get to have a really good time. And this is kind of me. You know, this is my little family, and this is my work, and this is what I do. But for me, life wasn't always like this. And what I want to do today is share with you my journey that kind of brought me to where I am. And we can go all the way back to around when I was your age. So here's a couple photos of me when I was on your age. The one on the left, that's me with my dad. He's on the left, I'm on the right there. That was after a long backpacking trip. Then on the right there, that's me skiing. And you'll notice there's something different about me, right? Yeah, I'm in a wheelchair now. Back then I could walk. So something happened to me later in my life, which I'll tell you about. After I grew up, actually after I was an adult, I was in an accident. And ever since then, I've been in a wheelchair. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But first I want to tell you about kind of how I grew up. So this is the state where I grew up. Who knows what state this is? How about someone in the back? Go ahead. It's not Wyoming. It's very close. Go ahead. It's Colorado. That's right. So there's Colorado. There's the Colorado flag. On the bottom left there, we have the Colorado flower. That's called the Columbine. And I really liked Colorado. I grew up there. I did things like skiing, mountain biking. I had a good time. And then one day, when I was about your age, my parents brought this thing home. So this, you might not recognize this, but potentially you saw it downstairs. They actually have something similar to this downstairs. This is an old Macintosh computer. And they brought it home. It looks somewhat similar to the computers you have today, although the computers you have today, they can fit in your pocket, right? They're a lot smaller. There you go. But some things you might recognize. For instance, there's a keyboard. You probably recognize that. There's a mouse. You recognize that. There's also a little slot here with something that you put in. Who knows what that's for? All right. How about you? Floppy disk. Right. So today you don't really need those. Everything's kind of saved in the cloud, as they say, on the internet. But back in these days, when I was your age, we had to save things on these disks. So if you had a video game, you wanted to save your game states. If you wrote a document, you wrote a paper, something like that, you had to save it on these disks. And that's how we shared things. We'd carry these disks around and share them with each other. There wasn't emailing or anything like that. And so my parents brought this home, and wow, isn't this exciting? You know, it's something that lights up, it flashes, you have keys. We'd never seen something like this. And I really enjoyed playing with this thing. Things I enjoy doing with it, video games, of course. Who here likes video games? Right, they're great. It's a great use of technology. I enjoyed playing flight simulators. Does anyone here like flight simulators? You know, where you're flying around? There you go. They're great. And another thing I really enjoyed about this, for the first time, I realized, hey, I knew how this works. And I actually knew how it worked better than my parents, right? So I could teach them how to use things, how to do stuff on it. And I'm sure a lot of you might be there as well. But like I said specifically, there we go. I enjoyed playing games on this. Here's an old photo of me, look a little different, right? This is back when I used to play video games. I had this computer, it was great. And the reason I like doing this is you could actually manipulate something on a keyboard or a mouse or a controller, and then you could see the images moving on the screen, right? Things would move. You had some kind of control over what was happening. And that was very exciting to me. So I said to myself, hey, this is a big interest of mine. Maybe I should learn more about this. So at this time I was in high school, I was kind of thinking, how can I learn more about this? Well, computer science, that's the path I chose. This is a degree program that I went into for college. And there you go, I graduated, right? So I'm sitting there, I have my computer science degree. It was a lot of work. It took some discipline to get this, right? I couldn't just coast by, but I knew computer science interested me. And I wanted to put in the effort to learn about it so I could continue that interest after college. So here I am after college. I like video games. What do I do now? Well, there's another thing. I mentioned flight simulators. I like those. I also like space. And nearby where I live, there was a company called Lockheed Martin that was hiring people to work on things with space. One thing they were working on was this spacecraft right here. You might have heard this recently in the news. This is a spacecraft called Juno. That's right. I worked on this a long time ago. It actually launched, and it took a long time to reach its destination. And it's returned beautiful images like this. Now, isn't that impressive, right? It's a whole nother world, a whole different world, way far away from here. But at the same time, it reminded me of, those video games I was playing, the technology that I was interested in, where I could command something, I could issue commands and see it work on a screen. Only this time, the screen that I was looking at wasn't being powered by a box right in front of me. It was sending back signals from a spacecraft that was a whole world away, taking photos similar to this. So who knows what this is a photo of? Go ahead. Jupiter. And who knows what this big circular thing is right here? Yeah, go ahead. Great red spot. So this is a huge hurricane on Jupiter. It's actually enormous, massive. It's actually bigger than the entire planet Earth. And it's even bigger than that. You could actually fit more than 2 Earths, 2 entire Earths in this spot. So that just shows you how large something like this is. And that really, go ahead. It's a giant hurricane. And it's actually been turbulent. The winds have been blowing for many years, millions of years, in fact. So, go ahead. When do I think the hurricane will stop? Well, we don't really know, and that's actually something that's one of the reasons why we send these spacecraft to places like that, to learn about them. So here's a little photo of Juno. It took a long time to get there, right? It took 5 years to get there. So it seems like a long time, but Jupiter's actually really far away. So it was traveling pretty fast. Who thinks they know how fast it was going? Go ahead.
Like 1 million miles per hour.
1 million miles per hour. That's very fast. Not quite that fast. Go ahead. 17,000 miles per hour. So it was going actually close to 165,000, 700,000 miles per hour. So if you've ever felt like you've been driving fast, riding in a car and it's going fast, it's nothing like this, right? This is really fast. And Jupiter's far away, like I mentioned. If you take Earth's here, and you draw a straight line to Jupiter, it's actually 365 million miles away. That's incredibly far. However, Juno traveled much further than that. It traveled 1.74 billion miles away. So who knows why they think it took Juno so long to get there? How about over here? That's actually a really good answer. So let me show you a little bit of a diagram about how this works. But let me tell you that Juno actually can't travel in a straight line. It's not possible to do that. Like you mentioned, these planets, they move in orbits around the sun. And Juno actually has to follow the orbit to get there appropriately. So let's run this little video. and I'll kind of show you Juno's path. So you can see here, Juno just launched from the Earth. This is 5 years ago. Now it's traveling out. It's going past Mars. It's going out into the vastness of space in between Mars and Jupiter. This is about a year out, and then it actually starts to turn. Starts to come getting closer to Earth, right? This is about 2 years out, and then it actually came very close to Earth and rocketed past to continue its trip onto Jupiter. So here it keeps going. This is about 3 years out now. It's been traveling at this point that you see. Actually, when it's spinning, so the question was, can it slow down to allow Jupiter to catch up? It actually isn't going as fast compared to Jupiter. You can see it does a couple what we call deep space maneuvers, which means it basically fires its jets so that it can come and get aligned with Jupiter. So what you saw there is it kind of goes out, and then it comes back to Earth. Now, what we call, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. We call that a slingshot maneuver. So if you've ever taken like a towel or a bag and you've whipped it around like this, you know it can get really fast, right? Whipping it around. That's exactly what Juno was doing. It needed to get so much speed to go that distance that it actually had to go out a ways, come back, and it used the Earth's gravitational force to slingshot out even further. And that was actually the most efficient way to get Juno out there. So it didn't need to carry all of this fuel to do other burns and fire its jets and things like that. It can run primarily off of these solar panels that you see here. So this, as I mentioned, it's something I was very interested in. I worked on at Lockheed Martin. And it's actually not that different from that computer I worked on, when I was growing up, that I played these games with when I was in middle school, when I was in high school. This computer here, you can see it has like a CPU, right? That's the processor of the computer. That's similar to what you were playing with, what you had here on your Raspberry Pis. It's a processor that can run different commands. The computer here, it had that processor, but so does Juno. Juno has just one of these very similar computers sitting on the inside of it that runs these commands. The computer, it also has what we call peripherals. Who knows what the peripherals are that we see here? I know might be a new word for you. Go ahead. That's actually, so Juno has things like that, yeah. On this computer that you see here, the peripherals are the keyboard and the mouse. These are things that attach to the computer. But on Juno, it has peripherals too. Its peripherals are the camera. Its peripherals are the antenna. And these other instruments that we have. We have different instruments that can measure things in the wind and determine the composition, what makes up different materials of the planet. And that's how we learn about Jupiter. So, same way you can program a computer like this, you can program a spacecraft, right? So learning about technology, having this interest in technology, allowed me to find my way here. It found my way to space. Now, at this point, I was working at Lockheed Martin. I was enjoying what I'm doing, but a couple things changed for me that kind of changed the direction of my path. The first thing was that these things started coming out, right? This is a cell phone. This here is an iPhone. And maybe 10 or 11 years ago, the first iPhone was introduced. And at this time, for me, it was something that was magical. All of a sudden, that big computer that I was working on before was shrunken down into the size of something that you could put in your pocket. And in addition to that, it could run all of these cool apps. And you could take it with you, right? You could take it with you, and you could send email to people. You could surf the internet. This seemed like a huge change. And on top of that, everybody had them. These were all being carried around in people's pockets. They could go with you. They were portable. So this is one thing that started to shift my interest. I was still interested in technology, right? Technology is so cool. Has these things like cameras and flashing lights and things you can program to do things, but now people can take them with you. So that was one thing that happened. The second thing that happened was I was injured, as I mentioned. So this is me shortly after I was injured. Again, I have rabbits, right? Rabbits are awesome. They keep you company. They're nice and fuzzy. So what happened to me is I actually had a bad mountain biking accident. I took a bad spill. I broke my back. I had what's called a spinal cord injury. So this basically made it so I don't have the use of my legs anymore, and I'm here in this wheelchair. So that's kind of where I was at this time, you know? I was in the hospital for an extended period of time. I was in a lot of pain. I wasn't feeling well. And I had this choice. I felt like I had a choice laid out in front of me, right? Where I can continue and follow my passions in technology, follow the things that interested me. Or I can stay in bed and focus on my health and other things. And what I learned when I was in bed, when I was in the hospital here, I was able to use that phone, you know, the one of the image I showed earlier. And I mentioned how powerful that is at sending emails and being able to connect to people. So that really enabled me, as I'm stuck in the hospital here, I could still connect with my friends and my family. And I realized the impact of technology like that can have on other people. And that's what kind of led my path. So at this point, I decided, hey, I want to get out of bed, I'll get in my wheelchair, I'll follow my interest. I want to build things that help people. I want to build things using these great new technology like mobile devices that can help people. But what did I have to do that? Well, I had to go back to school again, learn more. I had to again have that discipline to go learn what I wanted to do and how to do it. So I went back to school. After I graduated, that path brought me to Google. So I explained a little bit about what I do at Google. You know, I help people with disabilities, similar to myself. I help them through technology to be able to access the physical world and help other people. So I want to tell you a little bit more details about kind of what that means. So here's a phone. How can a phone help someone with an impairment? For this example, let's think of someone who's blind, right? A person who is blind can't see. Go ahead. Voice activation, that's awesome. Go ahead. Braille phone. So there's actually things that can attach to phones called Braille displays that actually let blind people understand what's on the phone. Something else a little interesting about phones, they actually have eyes, right? Yeah. What are the eyes on a phone? Go ahead. This camera, right? So if you're someone with a vision impairment, or you're a blind person, maybe you could use the eyes of the camera to help assist you. Now, there's technology out there called face recognition, image recognition. Technology like this actually allows a blind person to take a photo of something, and then their phone will tell them what's in that photo. And you can imagine how important this is, a technology like this is, how life-changing it is for someone who's blind. So something all of us take for granted. Maybe we're going out to dinner, and someone puts a plate of food in front of us. Now, if you're blind, you might not know what's on that plate. But through technology like this, that person could take a photo of it and be read a description of that food. Something else, what else do phones have? Well, if you're a person who's deaf, it means you can't hear, right? But phones have ears. Who knows what the ears on a phone are? How about in the back there? Microphone. Great. Phones have microphones. We mentioned voice recognition earlier a couple times. If I'm someone who's deaf, there's other people talking around me, I can't hear them. But my phone can hear them. And there's technology that would allow me to put my phone out on a table, and it can hear what other people are saying, and then print off the words on the screen so that I could know. Again, you can imagine how impactful this technology is, how important it is for these people. Another thing phones do, I mentioned earlier, I was laying in bed, in the hospital bed. It was difficult for me to connect to other people. It was hard to travel. I had to rely on either people coming to me or connect to other people through my phone. This is an amazingly powerful functionality and features that this technology has, the ability to connect with each other. So you can imagine different people who have different what we call mobility needs, motor impairments. These are people who have difficulty getting from one place to another. And this kind of technology makes a huge difference in these people's lives. All right, Here's another photo of me. This is a different type of technology. In this photo, you can see I'm wearing what they call an exoskeleton. This is actually a recent photo. So this isn't something that Google works on. This is a company that let me try this. This is something they're developing right now. It's a company called ReWalk. And it's called an exoskeleton. You put this on. I felt kind of cool. Kind of like I was wearing a suit like Iron Man, right? You guys like Iron Man? It's pretty awesome. And what this allows me to do is, there's actually motors in this thing that lift me up. So I can't use my legs at all right now. But with a suit like this, with technology like this, I can strap it on, and it will actually allow someone with a spinal cord injury, someone who's in a wheelchair, to get up, to stand, to walk, to go upstairs even. And you can imagine the impact of technology like this has to remove the barriers that are out there for people like me. So I wanted to show you this image because something like this type of technology is very inspiring to me. And it inspires me to do the work I do at Google to help other people with different types of accessibility needs or disabilities. Now, I wanted to wrap it up, but I wanted to tell you a little bit about, if you remember back when I was saying I was in the bed, I was in the hospital bed, and I kind of had this decision to, follow my interests. And I think all of you throughout your lives here, as you start growing up, you go to high school, you look at what your career wants to be, you'll have these decisions that come up. And so I'd urge you to follow your interests, follow things that excite you, follow your passion, have the discipline to study, to learn about it. Also, these projects I work on, things like Juno, the things at Google, I couldn't have done this without help from my colleagues and other people. It wasn't just me. So the work you did today, working in teams, working together, that's extremely important. You'll be doing that throughout the rest of your lives, throughout the rest of your career. And you'll have actually more impact. You'll be able to follow these interests that you have more if you work together and if you do work that's beneficial for other people. So following those things, I really think that nothing is out of your reach. Follow your passions, work together, and have the discipline to study about these things. So with that, thank you all for your time. You can open it up for any questions that you guys have. Finish with a lovely picture from Jupiter again. I love this photo, so go ahead.
When was the last time you went back to Colorado?
That's a good question. So I'm from Colorado. My parents actually live there. My wife's parents, they actually live there too, so we make it back fairly often, a couple times a year.
Are you a Denver Broncos fan?
I am a Broncos fan. Go Broncos.
What happened to the exoskeleton suit?
Say that one more time.
What happened to the exoskeleton suit for your legs?
Yeah, so that company let me try it out. It's called ReWalk. They do sell them right now. It's very exciting to wear something like that and be able to walk around. You walk around very slowly in it right now, and I'm really interested to see kind of where the technology goes. But that was just a demo. I only got to use it for about an hour.
How long does it take for images from Juno to reach Earth?
That's a good question. The question was, how long does it take for an image from Juno to reach Earth? Oh, now you put me on the spot. How long do you think it takes?
Months?
I'm guessing it probably takes several hours. So these images have to go at the speed of light, and it takes a while. So it's interesting, like when you're actually issuing commands to a spacecraft like this, you can't control it in what they call real time like you can a video game. You don't push a button and see something happens. You have to program it to work on its own, to have some sort of intelligence on its own. So you program it, you hope that it does okay, and it'll call back if it needs help. But there is a few-hour lag time in between when these signals go back and forth.
Did you build any part of the Juno?
So on Juno, I didn't build any of like the physical hardware. You saw these solar panels, the boxes, nothing like that. But what I did was write some of the software, write the program and the code, so that these pieces know how to talk to each other and that the spacecraft can fly and go out there and take these wonderful images and measurements.
So despite your spinal cord injury, how did you have the courage to follow your dream still?
That's a great question. So the question was, you know, I had a spinal cord injury. It's a very tough time. You know, you're injured. It doesn't look like there's a whole lot of options at that point. I'm a firm believer in that you shouldn't be upset over things you can't change, right? So I had a spinal cord injury. My legs didn't work after that point. I can't do anything about this. Actually, what I can change, though, is where I take the rest of my life. And what I want to do with the rest of my life was follow my passions. Do these great trips to Hawaii, go feed ostriches, right? And that's really the decision I made.
Would you rather prefer your exoskeleton or the wheelchair?
That's a good question. Would I rather have that exoskeleton or the wheelchair? Certain things like the exoskeleton can do, which are very beneficial. For someone like me, actually, who's sitting all the time, it's a lot better to be standing and be stretched out. So the exoskeleton helps with that. It helps with your blood flow. It helps you to breathe. My wheelchair, I can get around a lot faster. So I'll stick with the wheelchair until the exoskeleton can let me run around and jump and do all sorts of crazy things. Then I'll go to the exoskeleton.
So even when you decided you wanted to follow your dreams and continue with your softwaring idea, why didn't you go back to Lockheed Martin? Why did you go to Google instead of Lockheed Martin?
Great question, yeah. So one reason is I was interested in space. That stuff was cool. It was nice. But I saw all of these mobile devices that people had on them all the time. And I wanted to work on things that touched the lives of everyone. So I found space really interesting. Space wasn't the same as like a device that everyone's carrying around with us all the time. You know, they had all these fancy applications. I wanted to do something like that people carry around with them. It was really just kind of where my interest at that time took me, I could say. The other thing is Google's a great place to work for, right? If you know about Google, we have a lot of perks. We get free food. There's massages on site. So some of these things make it a little bit appealing.
Okay, we have another question over to your left.
Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
Is Google focused on pushing accessibility to something beyond just mobile devices, like head-mounted units or in-ear systems? Can you comment on any of that?
So our goal at Google is to make information universally accessible to all. So our direct work, you know, we encourage people to build on top of Android, build on top of the ecosystem, and really kind of follow that vision. So yes, we do have work that kind of explores these things, both on personal devices like Android, but also on all other sorts of technology, including, like we mentioned, Braille displays, head-mounted displays, different types of camera, things like that. Everything's kind of open to us.
What type of problems would you like to see tackled next as far as accessibility goes?
Well, I might be a little bit selfish here and would say I would love to have a wheelchair that could let me get upstairs. It seems like something fairly an obvious barrier. Yeah, go ahead. I have seen things like this that do exist before. Actually, there was a wheelchair by the same guy, Dean Kamen, who invented the Segway. He invented a wheelchair that can go upstairs. They don't sell it anymore, but something like that really interests me, kind of about how to remove barriers from people's everyday lives. That's really what accessibility is all about. For me personally, it's kind of more like physical barriers that get in my way. So I would love to be able to go upstairs. The other thing is I would love to be able to go in sand and go along the beach. So they have beach wheelchairs, but they're a little bit difficult to use. So I would love to see those made a little bit better.
Hello. So I have a question. How are you reaching people who are the end users? For instance, I have a father who's 84 years old and he's deaf, and he still is not a native user to technology. So how does Google let people know that these things are available and maybe give them some assistance in using them?
Sure. So a couple things I want to mention. We do have so first of all, we have a lot of outreach. We go to conferences that are specifically meant for assistive technology. We talk to a lot of people. We visit rehab centers and hospitals and talk to the therapists for people who are assisting kind of like the newly disabled and other things like that. We also have some marketing efforts that go on at Google. The other thing is we bring a lot of people on site when we're developing these. So it's very important for us when we're making a new product like this to actually test it with these users, with these people with accessibility needs. So we'll bring them on site, we'll put something in front of them, we'll ask them questions and see how it works. And then we'll use that feedback to make these products better. So those are the two ways that we kind of engage these people.
Have you were you part of the Google car or something?
Good question. Google self-driving cars. I don't work directly on those, but I'm very interested in them. Actually, when you think about kind of my interest at Google, accessibility and improving the access to places and technology for people with disabilities, self-driving cars are extremely important. Imagine if you're someone who's blind or you have poor vision. You can't go out and drive. You would have to rely on someone else to drive, and a self-driving car can give people like this independence and allow them to go out and do these things.
Is the Google self-driving car part of the accessibility thing?
It's not part of accessibility, no. It's a separate group. Yeah.
Oh, what if there's a malfunction while driving in the Google car? The car won't really know the situation, so how would it react?
So I'll let the self-driving car folks answer that. But I will say that we hope to never be in that situation where the car doesn't know what to do. And these cars actually have algorithms that allow them to do things like if they're unsure of the situation, you can pull over carefully and slowly and make sure the situation's safe. But the goal behind the self-driving car is to never be in a state like that, to always be in control. Any other? Oh, here we go.
Did the crash of the Tesla autopilot have anything to do with the Google car? Were they affected at all?
Not connected at all. The Google self-driving car is completely separate from Tesla.
So what if the person is both blind and deaf?
Yeah. So there are people who have a vision impairment and a hearing impairment. And there are certain types of assistive technologies that work well for these people. So one thing is Braille. So if you're familiar with Braille, it's the system of dots that people can feel. That's a way that these people can hear information through their fingertips. And that works for deaf people and blind people. Self-driving car would work there too. So his question was, what about a car for the blind and the deaf? So a self-driving car seems perfect for someone like that. Voice recognition, yeah. So they would have to use another means. So there would have to be another type of assistive technology that would have to be employed to get a person who can't speak to be able to use a car like this, yeah, if it required voice recognition.
When the websites are created, they do have an accessibility requirement. So do you all have it for apps as well? So when someone's developing an app, rather than you having to, go through the accessibility later on.
So the question was related to accessibility of apps on native apps on mobile devices. So you mentioned there is a standard for accessibility on the web. This is called WCAG, W-C-A-G. There's not yet a standard for mobile apps. This is currently under development, there's a global consortium that is building up the standard, like a mobile standard. That said, I would say that WCAG or the web standard is fairly applicable, but certainly when we're developing things at Google, we have an interest in accessibility from the very beginning, and we want to see all of these apps work well for people who have varying degrees of accessibility needs. So this is certainly something we focus on.
Patrick, what's the difference between a disabled person and a person with disabilities?
What would you say the difference is?
Well, from my experience living in a family with people with disabilities, is people have disabilities does not mean that they're a disabled person.
I think that's a wonderful way to put it, yeah. And I think this is an important way to phrase it, too. It makes a difference in how you frame the person and what's unique about them.
Do we have any last questions from anybody? Okay. I have one final question then. You've kind of addressed this a little bit, that as these students are heading off into their futures and they have a lot of different choices in front of them, what advice would you give them? How would you advise that they kind of move forward in their academic studies and their personal hobbies and interests, and as they move off into the rest of their future?
Yeah, there are a lot of choices that you have. And I guess my advice to you, like what worked well for me, was figuring out kind of what drives you. Like there's a lot of stuff that was interesting to me when I was younger, like skiing, mountain biking, computer games, flight simulators, space, things like that. And for me, I kind of found a common theme through this was technology. And what this did is it allowed me to focus on computer science. Computer science isn't specific to any of these things, but it kind of opened up the doors to whatever I wanted to kind of follow and where my interests led me. And at first, those interests were space, but you can kind of see how that shifted a little bit. So that's kind of one thing, like, find what the common theme is and follow that interest. The other thing is educate yourself. Like, there's a lot of these different things that you might be interested in. Learn about them. Flesh out any ideas you have. Try out some of these things. Be creative. And I think you'll see your passion and your interest in various areas kind of develop as you do that.
Great. Thank you so much. You've been an incredible rock star and a real inspiration. So thank you very much. Big round of applause.
Alrighty.
Thank you so much, Patrick.
Thank you, guys.